Hey friends, it's Ian Khan here at FII 9 and we're talking to industry movers, shakers, and people who are really making a difference. I've got with me Juan Delgado, and Juan, welcome to this interview series with the futurists here at FII.
Thank you, Ian. It's great to be here.
Tell us, what have you been seeing here at FII so far, and anything that stood out?
I think the amount of positivity of people, of course, and world leaders that are here covering real problems that are going on, both economical, social, and from a developmental point of view is very interesting.
Yep.
Some of the conversations I've had, both privately and in some of the conference rooms, have been fairly positive.
Excellent. So what is your focus right now, and why did you decide to come to FII?
We run a football media business which has a base in Riyadh and in Dubai, so we have a very big interest in the Middle East. We are the largest digital media company in football on the region, and so the interest for us is how do we help grow the sport from the grassroots all the way up to elite football level, so the Saudi Pro League and all the other professional leagues around the region. And we're interested in making investments, growing obviously the investment into the sport, as well as the audience and where we benefit from, which is engaged fans and fandom overall.
Yeah, so Saudi, especially Saudi, of course the Middle East in general, is where soccer has been played forever, right? It's a very popular sport, maybe top number one sport in Saudi could be soccer. There's lots of professional stuff happening. You've got superstars of soccer who are part of the soccer ecosystem here. Help us understand, where is professional soccer in Saudi right now? Where does it need to go, and what's the timeline for that? And I'm talking, are the new generation, how are they getting into the professional pro sports right now? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think first of all, the investment that the Kingdom, PIF, and companies like us, because we're not the only one, that are making in the sport have accelerated the growth of the audience, the distribution, the eyeballs that are consuming it in a very short amount of time. The stars, as you call them, and it's not just Cristiano, it's a lot of teams are now very successful, including, for example, Al Hilal, which made it pretty far in the Club World Cup, the world stage, have accelerated the growth of the sport. Now, the growth in the future, I think, comes from what you've seen in some cases in European football. I'm going to use the English Premier League as the example, where it's not just a handful of teams or 3 or 4 teams that are competing always for the title. It is usually 10 or 12 teams that are in contention. And so that brings up the level of competition, the level of engagement with fans, the ability to distribute content both on linear broadcast, streaming, and in the case of us, on digital consumption, be that social platforms or our own websites and apps. And therefore, that's the continuous investment that you got to make. The investment in infrastructure, how fans engage with the sport physically, both in going to the stadium and other things in which they consume content, is super important. And I think that will happen over time, but it's very accelerated in the way it's happening in the Kingdom. Yeah. And I think that will probably help the league catch up to other European leagues much quicker than people anticipate.
Of course. What's your, let's say, 3 to 5 year outlook, right? What's your 3 to 5 year outlook on the growth of soccer as a major sport in Saudi, professionally?
Yeah, I think you got to measure it from a global impact, not just a local impact. But I'll give you a local impact first from our business. We actually acquired a brand that has existed here for a long time called Quora, and it's the biggest football Arabic sports publisher in the region. And we've grown financially the business threefold in the last 4 years. That's the level of growth that we've seen domestically in the GCC region mostly. Now, globally, I think the league has all the potential to compete at a global stage, probably aided by companies like us that give it local coverage and then augment that. We have a show with the SPL in English that we're creating in partnership with them to distribute the content much wider in the UK and the US, etc. And I think that is the next step. So the fandom is already here, it's very engaged. There are successful stories, like I said, as with Al Hilal. However, the next step has to be, how do you compete on a regional level, both in the AFC, the Asian Football Conference, as well as, in the world stage.
Of course. One of the things I want to ask you is women's soccer. How popular is it here? Is it becoming something interesting for our girls to play?
That is a great question. I'll start by answering that we got into women's soccer in about 2021 around the Women's Euros. We actually created a brand ourselves. We've grown through M&A and organic as well, and launched it first in the UK, then the US, but actually we launched it in Saudi Arabia about 2 years ago. It is now the largest women's social and web and app brand in the world. And in Saudi Arabia, we've delivered more commercial success than other countries in Europe. I'm not going to list any names, so I don't make any comparisons. So the growth has been probably surprising to us, as well as the support from sponsors, both at the Saudi Federation level and some of the teams. I still think, and this probably applies to women's football overall, that the level of fan engagement, the attendance at stadiums definitely needs to improve. However, what we see is the consumption of content on social media, short form, vertical video formats, as well as long form, is pretty surprising and staggering. Hence, brands like Neom or brands that sit under Unilever have become our sponsors of content because they see the engagement, and they see the engagement in young female fans across the kingdom.
Of course. And I don't know the answer to this, but within the GCC, is there focus in other countries on women's soccer, or they're still growing it a little bit? I don't know the answer, so I'd love your...
We don't see it as much, unfortunately. Probably, I think it's due to the size of the market, the total addressable market. UAE and Qatar, just to pick on our next two biggest markets, are very successful in their own right. We do very well commercially. However, the size of the TAM is usually, single-digit million population. Sorry. Which in Saudi Arabia, it's obviously 30 million plus, and that just gives you a much bigger universe to try and build, a brand like ourselves and the coverage of women's soccer.
Yeah. Last question. Saudi's bid for the World Cup has been accepted, I believe.
That is correct.
We'll see how things go, but is that putting any positive impact on how people are perceiving soccer here in Saudi? I am sure there's super excitement on it, and I just want to know from your perspective, what are you seeing?
So we are very excited, but we've been here for a while. The way I would compare it is, we've been building up to the World Cup that is coming up next year, which is hosted in North America, and that has been a long, winded road to now being 9 months away from the tournament. However, the investment we started making was roughly about 3 years ago. The comparison point is in the kingdom, the investment is happening now. So we are set up in a way in which we can probably take more advantage of it. And specifically, the brands that are deeply involved in football are now beginning to think how they make investments, how they plan for the next roughly 8 years in the build up to the World Cup. So the investment isn't just happening in infrastructure, which you see all around, but also in how you tell the story, how you embed yourself in the global stage of football, so that when the tournament is here or is getting closer, then everybody will understand what Saudi Arabia's intentions are with football and football fans, and how they are going to be welcome here, just like we are here today, into a stage that is probably going to be just as big as the coming World Cup in 26.
Excellent. Juan, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us.
Thank you very much.
Speaking with you, and looking forward to an amazing future for football here in Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you.